Hi everybody, it's Onyx here. Welcome to What If Deku Had Bounce Powers, the movie. As before we start this video, I would like to bring up that I will not be editing this video to the fullest consent I normally do. It's going to be less edited but more higher quality into the 4K range. It's because these videos take a lot of time to render on Premiere Pro and takes way too much time to actually render onto YouTube. So if any of these videos end up being less and less edited throughout the weeks or so on and so forth, you guys will actually know why. I'm trying to pull into the movie side of things because you guys seem to really enjoy that since I've uploaded What If Deku Had Full Count of the movie. You guys seem to really enjoy that. I want to try and do this more and more often with my channel, so you guys can actually enjoy my content to the fullest consent it can. And also, one last thing, if you guys would actually like to see more movies on this channel, make sure to hit the like goal of like what, 600 likes, and I'll try and reach the next part out of a movie as soon as possible as I can. Without further ado, let's begin. Where should we begin? Okay, let's start with the beginning. Izuku is now 4 years old, going to the Dirt Doctor. Well, I meant to say Quirk Doctor, but you get what I mean, guys. As Izuku was sat there in his chair, rocking back and forth, holding his All Might action figure in his hand, excited, as the old man, or man, came into the room with a sad expression on his face. I'm excited to tell you that your son has a quirk, the man said excitedly. Wait, what quirk is it? She said. Well, it's a mix of yours, but more powerful, I would say. Instead of like attracting things to him, it's more based around he can literally steal it from someone's hand. Basically, it's like yoinking, you would like to say. Basically, instead of like, how do I put this into words, Miss Midoriya? Basically, do you know how your quirk can pull stuff to you and you can push it back like some form of negative force, like a magnet? Like how it repels each other, like that. But instead of like pulling it straight to him through like people can see it, instead of that, he can literally, like, it's teleportation right into his hand. It's that fast and that strong. It's basically like he's just teleported straight into his hand, the old man said. As Izuku's eyes glimmered with, you can see in his eyes being really happy, as Inko turned around to Izuku, telling him that he could be a hero, with the doctor actually reciprocating that as well, saying it as well. As Inko would have took Izuku outside and got into their car, taking Izuku home, explaining on the way what type of stuff he could actually do, Izuku being excited to actually show his quirk off in his class tomorrow. As Inko and Izuku both arrived back home, they were greeted with their husband sitting in his chair. So how did the actual appointment go? Hayashi said. It went really well actually. Izuku has a quirk. It's a really strong version of mine, Inko said with a smiling face. Wait, really? What can it do? I don't know, but it seems like he can steal power or something of this sort. It seemed like it at least, but it's really strong pull and push. Oh, but they are wrong. As Hasashi came over to Izuku and put his hand on his shoulder. So, my boy, would you like to train? As Inko would have just slapped him on the head. Shut up, you dum-dum. Izuku can't train, he's only 4 years old. The only thing he can train is his quirk. Stop being a dum-dum. You doesn't need to train his body yet. Wait until he's a bit older, then you can train his body, Inko said, a bit of a pouting face. As Hasashi would just looked at her and started to laugh, same with Inko. Izuku's life would have just continued to be almost the same like canon, but Bakugo's ego would have been through the roof because of Izuku being a little tiny bit stronger than him, but you get what I mean. We cut to Izuku's point of view at this very moment. Izuku was sat in his preschool, waiting for the teacher to actually come in before Bakugo came up to him. So, Deku, what are you doing this morning? What are you doing tomorrow? Well, me and my mum and dad are meant to be going to Camping trip, Izuku said, stuttering a tiny bit. So, what are you planning to do there? Well, Camp Bakugo, it's not that too hard to understand, is it? Izuku said, as Bakugo would have got enraged, thinking Izuku's treating him like a stupid to be more precise, as Bakugo would have just tried to throw an explosion, well, a tiny spark, at Izuku, with Izuku just taking the blast full on, getting a little bit injured, a little scratched and bruises, but it's nothing to be too worried about. Izuku just got back up and sat down in his seat as the teacher just walked in. So class, today we'll be learning about this certain thing, which I'm not going to go into because I really can't be asked to give you guys a fucking lecture. As Izuku and Bakugo both went outside to actually have their little break in between lessons, as Izuku was out there on his own, sitting there, just minding his own business, until Bakugo came up to him saying that his quirk was made of a villains randomly. Izuku was really confused why Bakugo was bullying him in the first place. Izuku would have tried to bring this up to Bakugo, asking him why he is being bullied by him, but Bakugo would have just shrugged it off and just said, "So, you gonna try to steal something I own, huh?" Bakugo said, shouting at Izuku. "No, why would I want to steal anything people own?" "Well, your quirk is stealing, so of course you would do that." "Actually, my quirk's called Shut up, Deku!" "Get here now," Bakugo said, grabbing his arm, causing little tiny explosions to bruise Izuku's skin. As Izuku tried to not fight back, but he had no choice but to, as Izuku grabbed Bakugo and threw him as far as he could, managing to throw him at least 2 feet away. As Bakugo started to run over to Izuku, throwing a bigger explosion, hitting Izuku's skin, charring it and burning it, sending Izuku into a wall, making Izuku cough up little bits of spit from his mouth. As the teachers would have saw this and rushed outside to see Izuku on the floor, beaten and bruised, as Bakugo just stood there with little scratches on his face. "Bakugo, what did you do?" the teacher said, as the teacher grabbed Izuku and put him inside and called the ambulance straight away. Well, Bakugo didn't know, he royally fucked up, as the day ended as Izuku was rushed to the hospital as fast as he could, as Izuku's parents was called, as Inko was furiously upset, as Isashi was nothing but angry at the Bakugo family for letting their kid have a big ego like that. Isashi instantly grabbed his coat and rushed out the front door, the same with Inko. Them being rushed straight into the hospital, asking where Izuku's room is, them being instantly told, as one of the nurses would have tried to intervene, stating that, "Hey, you're that, where's my son?" Isashi said very angrily. "He's in that room over there, room W405, right there." As the nurse would have said that, Isashi and Inko would have run down the corridor as fast as they could, them seeing Izuku on the bed fully awake but with bandages and little bits of plasters on his arms and legs and face. Inko, seeing her son in this situation, she just instantly ran to him and hugged him and cried. "My little Izuku, you okay?" she said, crying, as Izuku would have just said weakly, but managed to get a conversation out of him. "Yes, I'm fine, Mom. How are you?" Izuku said, as Inko just said, "Tummy, tummy, tummy." "You shouldn't have done that." "Done what?" Bakugo started it. Hisashi, hearing this, would have made him beyond angry, as Hisashi would have just tried to calm his nerves, but he instantly rushed out the room and called the police. I can't remember what number it is for the actual police in Japan, so you guys are going to have to deal with that for a little bit. As Hisashi called the police as they picked it up, as the police would have just said, "Okay, we'll do a full explanation, Mr. Midoriya. Is there anything else you need?" No, I'll be all. Just make sure that Bakugo kid gets locked up for what he's done to my little baby boy," Hisashi said, as the police would have just tried to just do a full explanation or a full search of the Bakugo residence, them finding only that their parents, or Bakugo's parents, or mainly Mixie I would say, are easy to anger, But it's Bakugo's personality, he's always going to be an arrogant prick. Izuku would have been recovered the day after because of anime logic, Poggers, as Izuku's life would have just stayed the same throughout their years, as the campsite actually finally began, as Izuku was now 10 years old. Izuku and his father and his mother both went camping one day during the holidays in Japan. As they both arrived to the campsite, them seeing a giant mountain field and forest ahead of them. Izuku's mother and his father both set up camp that night, with Izuku going straight into bed, sleeping like a log. But the moment morning arrived, however, Izuku felt something hurt in his head. Izuku walked straight outside to see a giant forest blooming in the distance like a giant tree. Izuku didn't see this on his way here, Izuku was thinking, as Izuku just started to walk over to it and walked further and further until he reached a little river type of waterfall. Izuku didn't know how to get over it, so he just went upstream to see if he could find anything he could actually get across with. Izuku arrived through 20 minutes of walking over there. Izuku saw nothing, as Izuku just thought, if I swim over here in a diagonal angle, would I be able to get across? But how strong is the current? Oh no, Izuku said. As Izuku just said, screw it. Izuku just started to jump into the water and started to swim as fast as he could. But the current just took Izuku, with Izuku just falling down into the waterfall, him hitting his head on the brick wall or the brick floor, him being unconscious for a good hour and two. As Izuku woke up to a pounding headache, as Izuku was surrounded by little trees that was emitting white and red light from the actual tree branches in itself. Izuku actually wondered what this was at this time, but he couldn't get anything, but Izuku just backed up out of being frightened. What the? Izuku said. It feels warm and comforting, like a hug from a mother or a hug from an animal. No, it can't be that, Izuku said, as Izuku just moved closer and closer to the branches, them almost fully actually doing their job, because they started to slowly start to fade. As Izuku just said, wait, stay, please, Izuku said, as the glow dissipated. The only thing that Izuku could do at this very moment was just keep on following where the big tree was. He completely forgot where his campsite was at this very moment in time. At this point, Izuku was almost lost. The only thing he knew how to follow was the giant tree in the center. As Izuku kept on walking and walking, the trees kept on becoming more denser, thicker, and more inclined to push in more. As Izuku traveled for another couple of miles, for another couple of hours, like an hour or two to be more precise, Izuku arrived at the actual big massive tree to actually see there was no way up except from climbing. Izuku took this risk and started to climb further and further and further up. As Izuku arrived halfway point, as Izuku took a little breather. Holy shit, Izuku said out loud. That is so bad. Whoa, why did I follow that? Why? Izuku said, trying to catch his breath, as Izuku just started to travel further and further up into the tree trunk. Izuku finally arrived up to the top to see a girl that looks like around his age. Oh, trust me, he is wrong. As Izuku arrived and just said, excuse me, but who are you? Izuku said, as the girl looked behind her to see Izuku just standing there right in front of her very eyes. How did a mortal get here? I thought the goddamn tree, lazy cunts, she said in her head, as she just said, excuse me, but how did you get here? No mortal can actually get past the trees, she said. I just accidentally fell down a waterfall and came here because I'm lost, Izuku said. It's okay, let's just stay here for a little bit. You can tell me where your campsite is. Let's see what it actually could be, she said. as she just walked up to him and just patted him on the head. If you guys could imagine what happened in Seven Deadly Sins, well, except from the big demon, of course, would probably happen here the same way, as Izuku actually gaining the trust of this fairy, or goddess, whichever way you want to call it. It's a fairy, as Izuku would have actually managed to talk with her for hours on end, realizing the time went past really fast, as Izuku just told her that he had to go, but you'll see her soon, as the girl would have just said, "Goodbye, Izuku. Have a wonderful day," she said, as Izuku would have just gone back down and tried to find his way back. Without realizing it, however, Izuku arrived back in 10 minutes, which took him normally an hour and something last time. Izuku arrived back at his actual campsite to see that his father and mother were very worried, as Inko instantly came rushing over to Izuku, asking him where she has been. "Oh, I've just been down to that little big tree over there," Izuku said, pointing towards a big tree. "That tree's a bit big. Were you under it or over it?" she said. "Oh, I was just under it, talking to some plant life and animals," Izuku said, smiling. As Inko would have just said to Izuku, "Make sure you don't wander off like that again. You worried me and your father half to death," she said, as Izuku's day went on as normal, with Izuku doing normal camp stuff with his mother and father. The next day, however, Izuku went back to go visit this wonderful girl again. Izuku didn't actually get her name, so he just calls her Miss. Izuku arrived back at the actual big tree trunk to see that she was just standing there, like she was just waiting for something. Izuku just walked over her and patted her on the shoulder. "Hey, how are you?" Izuku said, as she just turned around and said, "Oh, it's you. Nice to meet you again. How have you been doing?" she said. "I've been doing very well. I'm just wondering if you would like to grab something to eat down there," Izuku said, pointing to his campsite. "No, it's fine, Izuku," she said. "Oh yeah, by the way, I didn't ask for your name. What is your name?" Izuku said, tilting his head left and right, as Izuku just stared at her with puppy eyes to try and tell him what her name was. She finally caved in and said it was Elise. Elaine, I think it was in the anime. "Wow, that's such a cool name," Izuku said. "So, how long have you been here for?" As their conversation went on for another hour, before Elaine finally told Izuku about why she was finally here and why she wanted to protect it. Izuku finally understood why she was here on her own for so long. As they were talking for another seemed like an hour again, Elaine finally offered Izuku a way to actually live for eternity. As Izuku would say, "Eternity? Why would I want to live that long?" Izuku said. "Well, for us fairies, our lifespan goes all the way to around 4,000 years old. If we're lucky, we get all the way to 7,000 if we're lucky. That's only for like the really royal bloodline that's pure fairy. But I've been guarding this for quite a hefty long time, Izuku, and I feel like you would make the perfect successor for it. You're innocent, you're kind-hearted, you're also brave. I feel like you would make a really good successor for this immortality, Izuku." As Elaine just turned her back and walked straight to the glass of water that was pouring out of the lake. "Please, Izuku, drink this and become my successor," she said. As Izuku just said, "Well, what happened to the forest?" "Well, it will actually stay somewhat prosperous for a little while, but I'll try and put as much magic energy as I can to keep it stable and alive," Elaine said, as she held out the actual glass of water that contained the human or immortality, as she passed it on to Izuku, telling him to drink. As Izuku was hesitant, but Elaine laid him on, as Izuku started to drink, and drink, and drink, and drink, until it was fully emptied. Izuku had some steam form off his body instantly. As Izuku's body started to rapidly heal the wounds he got a couple of months or days ago from the actual him falling down the tree or the cliff. As Izuku felt good as new, as Izuku just went God, that's a lot of smoke, Izuku said, wafting his arm around in front of his face. So Izuku, are you okay? Elena said. Yeah, I'm alright, Izuku said. So, what do you feel? I feel strong, I think, Izuku said. So, let's just check something really quick to make sure immortality works. If it doesn't work, I'll heal it myself, Elena said. She just tapped Izuku's arm, breaking it instantly. As Izuku's arm, 1 second after breaking, it healed almost instantly, with all the blood drying up from around the corner, it being healed along with it. As Izuku had to go back to his campsite, but she would always be there if Izuku needs her the most, or you can just call upon her by just any means necessary, she said, smiling at Izuku. As Izuku just walked off back to his campsite, saying goodbye to one of his first ever friends he ever made, without people using him for his money or his quirk. As we do a little bit of a time skip until Izuku is now 14 years of age. Izuku has trained with the fairy princess or queen for all of his life since he was 10 years old. Izuku's people around him hasn't figured out he can heal from almost anything, because they actually haven't even injured him once. Since Izuku's had his power, however, since he was around about 10, Elaine actually managed to figure out Izuku's power was similar to someone back in the year 300s when she met someone, but she just put it to the back of her thoughts, however, but she did know how to teach Izuku how to use his powers correctly. As she taught Izuku for those 4 years, Izuku managed to actually learn from her and managed to actually learn how to take people's power temporarily and add it to his own, making him a lot stronger than what he should be. And then he wouldn't have to rely on his immortality all the time to only get one hitting from destroying his body consistently again. As the final day of middle school arrived, as Izuku was sat in his class like canon, Izuku was actually reading some books that Elaine actually gave him to read through. Izuku's managed to actually read through most of the pages throughout of his own class without being noticed by the teachers or students. Izuku's managed to actually get the book of how to use magic power and how to actually contain and control it, so he won't have to accidentally explode one of his limbs or explode his head off again, what he did during his training with Elaine. When the teacher walked in with some altitude papers to actually get everyone's attention. So I hear you all want to go to different high schools and everything. That is amazing, but we all know you want to go into the hero track, as he threw those papers into the air like cannon. As Izuku just stared at him and stared back at his little reading book of what he was reading beforehand. Izuku didn't really pay much attention to it, as until he said everyone's name, he was going to go to UA. He said Bakugo's, like canon technically, until he got to Izuku's name and the word recommendation, as Bakugo jumped onto his desk and said, "Wait, what? That little nerd's got a recommendation? How?" Bakugo said, as Bakugo stared at Izuku with intent of killing him. But Bakugo held back his burning rage of killing Izuku, just so he can actually get in without getting a bad representation in his high school, or his middle school as you would like to say in Japan. As the day came to an end, Izuku was walking outside to be greeted with an angered-faced Bakugo staring at him with the intent of blood kill. As Izuku would have just ignored it and just walked off, but the moment he walked off, however, Bakugo would have just grabbed Izuku's shoulder, letting off little tiny explosions in his hand to create little bits of steam, or little explosion steam, or whatever you want to call it. As Izuku would have just told Bakugo to let go before he actually hurts him. Bakugo would have just ignored Izuku and just applied more and more force to Izuku's right arm, applying the force of the explosion to actually burn through Izuku's uniform and his skin as well. The moment he hits the skin, however, Bakugo saw a lot more smoke coming from Izuku's arm. As Bakugo let it stop his explosions for a second to see Izuku's arm being healed completely, like it was no injuries there. Bakugo just shrugged it off, thinking it was just his clothes just burning even more. But before Bakugo could even attack, Izuku was stopped by two girls right in front of him. Hey, Izuku, can we talk to you, please? They both said by stuttering unison. Yeah, sure, what's up? Izuku said with a smile on his face. I'm just wondering if you could follow us now, please. Yeah, sure. Where are we going? To the cherry tree. Yeah, sure, Izuku said with a big bright smile on his face, as the two girls led Izuku to the actual cherry tree, where they would have just said two words, four words to be more precise. Izuku, I love you, would you please go out with me? They both said, as Izuku's face would have just blushed at this, thinking two girls in his year group just asked him out randomly. As Izuku just said, Izuku was thinking. What do you like about me? Izuku said. We like how you're always courageous and you stand up for other people. It's like you're always a protector, they both said, as Izuku just said to them. Am I right to think about this and tell you tomorrow morning? Izuku said, as they both nodded rapidly, saying, yes, you can. As Izuku walked off that day, as Izuku would have just took the underpass like the original, as Izuku would have encountered the sludge villain. This is where the story might be changing. As Izuku saw the sludge villain about to attack him, Izuku used Hunter's Fist and absorbed most of the sludge villain's energy, leaving it just like enough to at least survive or grasp onto air. As we cut to All Might's point of view. What the fuck? Where the hell does the sludge villain go? As All Might said that, All Might could feel that One For All was feeling a little bit weaker, as All Might debuffed a tiny bit to 20% of his buff form. What the hell? Why the hell am I 20% less buffed? That's fucking weird, All Might said, as we cut back to Izuku's point of view with the sludge villain, as Izuku instantly threw a punch the moment that happened, as the wind pressure was that immense it blew Izuku's right arm clean off its socket. As Izuku was said, ah, fuck, Izuku said in pain. Damn it, I need to get used to that, Izuku said. But I can't, can I? My nerves keep on getting replenished and it feels like new. So I can't do that, can I? Izuku said. As Izuku would have just heard, ha ha ha, I am me, holy shit. What kid, what happened to your arm? All Might said. But the moment All Might said that, he blinked, as the kid's arm just rapidly regenerated back to its normal form. It would have been like he was never injured in the first place, as All Might would have just tapped Izuku on the shoulder, saying, Kid, are you alright? That looked like a nasty injury. Yeah, I'm fine. I don't feel any different, Izuku said, as All Might would have just said, good to know. As All Might would have just told Izuku to be more careful at this time, to not try and use his quirk, but the moment Izuku let go of using his quirk, All Might could feel his One For All power back up to 20% more of his buff form, leaving him back up to his physical fitness prime. Well, not as his full prime, but his prime before he got his power yoinked. As All Might would have took this into consideration, that this kid right in front of him, if he was correct, he could make the perfect successor, All Might was thinking. As All Might didn't have enough time left, so he grabbed the sludge villain as fast as he could. As All Might giggity got out of there as fast as he could. God. as All Might managed to get out of there and debuff onto the roof. Here's the change that All Might would have actually not encountered Izuku for the second time, this inquiring that All Might would have more time than the original. The moment Izuku got home, Izuku explained to his mom what happened with the villain, as Inko was extremely worried that her baby boy was trapped or could have been trapped in a sludge villain incident, but she knew he would be okay for the fact that he has super regeneration and for the fact he can actually survive most of the attacks that villains actually do to him, for the sake of him actually stealing people's powers away from them for a certain period of time and certain percentage as well. We're going to do a little time skip for this 10 or 9 months of training Izuku was done. With Izuku's training, he would have probably just trained with Elaine for the rest of the time, with Elaine struggling even more to try and keep up with Izuku from his strength increasing every single time he comes back from the forest. He becomes stronger every single time. As we come to the day of the entrance exam, Izuku will be walking into the building like his Bond's personality, no care in the world attitude, because he's immortal. He can't die. As Izuku walked into the building, sitting down to have a talk with President Mike for 5 minutes until the lecture finally started. As everything went like cannon, with Bakugo getting the attention of Ida, shouting, and so on and so forth. Now for the actual physical portion of the exam. Izuku was stood at the gate getting ready to run, as Izuku was stopped and Izuku was stopped and held by the shoulder, telling Izuku that he had to stop for a couple of seconds and wait for everyone else. Izuku was confused at this before President Mike said go. Izuku just ignored Ida and started to run as fast as he could, stealing energy around him, running even faster and faster, to the point he basically started to absorb more and more power from the robots, breaking them, and the punch as well, becoming 30% of All Might's prime heyday strength, stacking up points upon points upon points until the 0 point arrived. Izuku had to run back to get some cover, but he heard someone scream as Izuku looked back to see a blonde-haired girl in the middle of the rubble. Izuku had no choice but to run into the fray. Izuku actually managed to steal 30% of the actual monster's full power, with Izuku jumping and trying to get to her as fast as he possibly could, with Izuku lifting up the rubble that was keeping the girl down onto the floor. Izuku lifted it up and managed to help her out and saved her from the actual behemoth known as the 0 pointer. Izuku managed to run as far as he could before one of his arms exploded from the amount of pressure he was using with his power, stealing and bestow. But the moment his arm blew off, the girl just said, oh my god, what the fuck?" she said out loud. Shizuku looked over to see her in shock. Your arm, it's blown off." "Oh, don't worry about it, it'll grow one back," Izuku said. Literally not even a second later, Izuku's arm instantly grew back, with the girl saying, "Oh, thank God you have a regeneration quirk. Holy shit." Oh, how wrong is she? As Izuku dropped her off at the front actual area where everyone is, as Izuku shouted to get help for her injured leg. As Izuku instantly rushed back in, taking more and more of the monster behemoth's power away from it. It's barely even moving anymore. As the moment Izuku jumped off the building from where he was sitting, his legs instantly blew off his body, as Izuku instantly collided with the behemoth, sending it pummeling into the ground and sending it flying 5,000 meters away from Izuku's position. As for all of the heroes that were in the operation room, I can't say the word actually, they were all in shock, thinking a kid that could basically just regenerate himself could actually be that strong. But to their dismay, they don't know they have the regeneration quirk yet. It's just that they think he still has a super strength. I rephrased my words incorrectly. As Izuku was pummeling to the ground from his body being strained enough he couldn't move it, like what Bond did with the fight of the 10 Commandments. As Izuku hit the ground hard enough to actually make a giant shockwave go through the buildings because of his muscle mass being really heavy. The moment Izuku was actually spotted, most of the actual people around him came rushing over to him to see him in a bloodied and bruised mess with 2 of his legs and arms missing, making him into an amputee. As most of the students there were throwing up, seeing Izuku's arms and legs being shaved and cut off. As most of the heroes would have saw this and came rushing down to Izuku's side, but however, the moment they got there, Izuku's arms and legs were fully back to normal, thinking this kid must be really that strong. As Izuku managed to just get his left arm up and his mouth moving. "Excuse me, but could you please just take me to the nurse's office? I really can't move," Izuku said. "Why can't you move? Are you paralyzed?" "Nope, overuse of my first quirk, or my actual quirk. I basically buff my body up to the point it basically strains it to the point I can't move." "What about your regeneration? Doesn't that help?" "Fuck no. This goes into the soul, my guy. This fucking hurts," Izuku said. As Izuku managed to get help from Midnight, lifting him up and taking him to the nurse's office. The moment Izuku got to the nurse's office, Izuku stayed there for a good 5 to 2 hours, or 2 or 5 hours. Izuku would have stayed there, as Izuku would have just basically been healed enough to actually start moving on his own. Izuku left the school building and waited a couple of weeks for his actual acceptance letter to come. The moment his actual letter came, however, it also came with another note instead of the actual disc itself. Izuku Midoriya was told to come 2 days before the actual start of UA High and start having a chat with the principal about his power. Izuku was confused at this. Why would they want to know about his power? Izuku was thinking. But Izuku opened the actual hologram and greeted with All Might. Izuku was shown to actually pass All Might's record and actually managed to get over 300 fucking points. My guy is fucking bad. He's easily enough to be the fucking world level, dude. Holy. As Izuku was greeted with all those points, Izuku screamed in happiness, but put himself back into his original state of calm, cool, and collected. As we skip those days, the moment Izuku actually arrived at UA, Izuku was being stared at by 2 teachers in general sight of this vicinity, this being Mike and Midnight, them being confused thinking they might have seen him somewhere before, but they could have been wrong. As Izuku arrived at Nezu's office, Izuku actually was confused why he was actually being called here in the first place. Before Izuku could open the door, he was told to come in by Nezu. Izuku was greeted with Nezu sitting there in his chair, like the little rat chicken he is, as Izuku had a chat with Nezu for a good couple of hours, or a couple of minutes, before Nezu finally brought up the subject about the nature of his quirk. Nezu did a couple bit of research. None of one in his family actually had a regeneration quirk like this, and we're just wondering if you could heal a certain someone for us. "Are you high?" Izuku said. "I can't heal anyone." "I don't know where you got that from," Izuku said. "Well, you see, we've done some digging, and it turns out you keep on going to a forest in the far regions of Japan. And we're just wondering why you'd be going there, that's all." "For training, duh," Izuku said. "Why the else would I want to go there?" "Oh, then, okay. You're free to go," then Nezu said. "We'll see you in 2 days. As Izuku walked out of the building, being greeted with the same stares from Midnight and President Mike once again. "Why are they staring at me?" Izuku said internally. As Izuku walked out of the building, as we skip a couple of days to the actual start of UA High. Izuku was gotten ready and actually almost about to walk out of his front door, before he was greeted with Inko and Asashi both hugging Izuku from behind. "Come on, Izuku, my boy. Have a good day at first at school, alright?" "Alright, Dad." "Alright, Mum. Bye," they both said in unison. As Asashi both said, I hope Izuku doesn't get recognized. That would be very bad, wouldn't it, Inko? He's an actor, he can play it off really easily. And plus, he's amazing at cooking, so he can probably just blend him off that way. Probably, yeah, but we do have to be careful. As Izuku actually managed to arrive at UA High, him taking in the sights and seeing all of the buildings that was there. As Izuku arrived at his first class of the day, as he saw a behemoth looking door. Oh, please let there be giants, 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 Izuku said. As Izuku opened the door to see one arrogant Pomeranian and one Sonic the Hedgehog arguing. As Izuku just thought, fuck, Izuku said. As Izuku went to his seat and sat down. As a couple minutes later, when Izuku sat down in his seat, a guy in a yellow sleeping bag came through the door, seeing everyone. As the same alterations and the same conversations would have happened like canon, but the actual changing rooms would be kinda different. Yo bro, you're so manly, Kirishima said from behind him. Excuse me, I'm what? Manly. You know what? Buff as fuck? Manly? Kirishima said, looking like a crackhead. As, you know what? Type in Kirishima's a crackhead in the comments section if you guys have actually made it this far. Like, spam that shit. As Kirishima would have just told Izuku that how manly he looks in his buff type of form that he saw in the entrance exam. Sure, I guess, Izuku said, very active, very awkward around him because he's being awkward himself. As Kirishima just said, oops, sorry if I'm being a little bit too far-fetched. Nah, it's alright, you're just complimenting me, Izuku said. As everyone else came outside, but Mineta, for the other hand, he would have got his head into a wall because of perverted things. As everyone came out of the changing rooms, as Aizawa explained everything like the original, which I don't feel like going into because this is a movie. I'm trying to get all the action as possibly can. As Aizawa threw a ball at Izuku, telling him to actually throw it at his full strength or he will be expelled, Aizawa said. Okay, that seems a bit far-fetched to being expelled, Izuku said. Well, Harry Hungry, yeah, you know, you've explained that, Aizawa. As Izuku just grabbed the ball, as everyone around him could feel their power being drained from their actual bodies. As Izuku just looked like he was getting buffer and buffer. As Aizawa thought at the back of his head. Huh, is he copying All Might? Aizawa said. As Izuku just spoke up, if you're thinking I'm copying All Might, don't bother. I'm really not. As everyone around that was confused, but Izuku knew what he meant. As Izuku just threw the ball at his max strength, getting around about 10,000 to 20,000 meters in throwing the ball. As the ball went flying, creating a giant shockwave around the area. As the people who had their powers or energy ripped away from them for a certain period of time, it would have returned to them. As the other thing they could do is just sit there and be blown back. But Todoroki was the only one that could actually stay in the same position he was actually staying in, because thanks to his eyes blocking his way of being flown away. I don't feel like actually going through the rest, so here's the scores. Izuku first, and everyone else like the original, but bumped down one thanks to Izuku getting his groove on with his throwing his ball. As Izuku and everyone else actually came out of their rooms. As the next couple of hours, Izuku heard a giant thump through the corridors. Them saying, "Haha! I am here in the bizarre position!" All Might said, pushing through the door as loud as he could. As everyone else there was shocked, seeing All Might, the #1 hero of the world, in their class, as most of the people would have actually said the same things like canon. "Oh my god, he's in his Silver Age costume, oh my god," Kirishima said. "So manly," as everyone else just said the same things. As for Izuku's hero costume, it would have gotten changed into it, of course. It would be more like Ban's actual clothing from Seven Deadly Sins Season 4. I know there's not much difference, but it's like with the furry coat and shit, like the stretch out one. As everyone else actually came outside, but most of the girls just stared at Izuku for the rest of the time they were there, including a certain blonde-haired girl who actually took interest in Izuku. She just stared at Izuku consistently and blushed at him, as Izuku would have just saw this and felt really confused about why this girl was staring at him so confusedly. As everyone else just sitting staring at Izuku more or less. It's just me staring at Izuku, just like increase the timer. As for the people who had picked the teams and everything, it will be the same like canon, but instead of Ochako being very bubbly and scared, she'll be more trying to be confident to be trying to impress Izuku, more or less. As everyone else did their teams, and let's go with the first arc. As Izuku and everyone else was getting ready to actually go into the building, as Izuku contrived a plan telling Uraraka to actually hover him across the actual area, basically tell him to come at the top and he'll crush down and try and get the bomb as fast as he can. As Uraraka touched him and as he folded up into the air, Izuku stole power from the area behind him and the forward of him, including the people in the building. Izuku managed to manifest as much power as he could, around about 10 or 12% of his actual power, without making them want to pass out or die, more or less. As Izuku managed to actually bust through the first layer, as Izuku pushed through the third layer as well, seeing the bomb and Bakugo and Ida standing there in all their glory, trying to be villains. "Damn you, Deku! Come here!" Bakugo said, charging at Izuku. As Izuku just evaded and punched Bakugo in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him going unconscious. As Izuku saw Ida, and just Ida tried to reciprocate him, but Izuku just chopped his leg and broke the first layer of the kneecap, making it more like a wobbly knee than anything else, making Ida not be able to stand up, not even one bit, as everyone else would have been shocked at this, thinking Izuku's really that powerful. As Izuku just went over and touched the bomb as the hero team won that round, as everyone else's rounds went the same like canon. But the moment Izuku had his chance to actually go home, he took it and went straight to the forest of the area. As for you guys, I actually posted a community tab yesterday about how Izuku, what type of ship would you guys want? We had 5, basically the ship that is in 7 Deadly Sins, Ban, Exa, Elaine. But I actually was commented about this on my Discord server. Does Elaine look like a lolly? No, she does not. No, she does not, mate. She looks more like around Izuku's age, but more or less a little bit more toned, I would say. So she's not a lolly, so don't say that. As Izuku and everyone else actually went outside, as Izuku just decided to actually go straight to the forest and tell Elaine that he passed, and tell her something else as well. The exact moment Izuku arrived at the forest, Izuku could see around him that the forest is still dying on the outer layers, but on the inner layers it's flourishing and looks beautiful. Izuku felt sorry for it, thinking it was his fault that everything around here was dying because of him. Elaine telling him to actually drink the eternal youth potion. As Izuku actually came in to the actual forest and jumped to find Elaine laying and sleeping in her quarters. As Izuku just let her sleep there for a good couple of hours before she woke up to see Izuku's face. As Elaine just blushed at that, thinking, "Oh damn it, he's cute," she said internally. As Izuku just had a normal conversation with her for another couple of hours before Izuku popped the actual question of this actual reason. "Elaine, would you go out with me, with marriage in mind?" Izuku said very confidently. As Elaine, without a second thought and not even thinking, would have said yes randomly. As Izuku would have been happy with Elaine just hugging him tightly upon tighter. As Izuku would have just been happy at this and just kissed her on the forehead.
but Elaine would have been happy with that. She just kissed him straight onto the lips, making Izuku blush a tiny bit of that. As the day went by, as Izuku and Elaine both stayed there with each other. But when the sun rised, Izuku had to go to his actual first class of the day, and the field trip began. As everyone put on their clothes like cannon as they all went outside to be greeted with Aizawa, All Might, and everyone else out there. As mostly of everyone out there was in the same hero costumes, same arguments, same compliments, everything like canon. As they would have all arrived at the USJ, everyone just standing there in shock, thinking how big the USJ building actually was. As mostly everyone there was actually shocked to see, but the moment Iraka saw who was actually teaching their class today, "Oh my god, it's Hero 13! Uraka said, deeping in her voice. As everything else would have gone like canon for the events of the USJ, everyone being scattered around the areas of the USJ, them being greeted with almighty villains and foes that they had to defeat. Izuku did it the same as canon by breaking his arm, but it being regenerated almost instantly every time. As for the Nomu fight, this is where we begin. As All Might was throwing mighty smashes at the Nomu, but the Nomu were absorbing more and more hits as it went on. The Nomu hit, smashed, and crashed against All Might's mighty blows, them barely doing anything, but it still did something to the point the Nomu was being forced back. But the moment All Might actually suplexed the Nomu into the ground, however, Kurigiri opened his paw and was about to kill All Might before Izuku threw a mighty smash, stealing the Nomu's power up to 50% this time, breaking Izuku's clean arm right clean in half. Without realizing it, Shigaraki wouldn't have seen Izuku's arm automatically heal. He would still think it'll be broken, as Shigaraki would have told Nomu to kill that brat and get him out the way. But Nomu could barely even move from his power just returning to him. But the moment they returned, however, the Nomu charged at Izuku, grabbing him by the waist and the top torso, ripping him in half, causing everyone in the USJ who saw that to throw up. As Momo, Kendo, and everyone like that, well, not Kendo, but everyone else threw up at the sight of Izuku's body being ripped in half. That's a good choice, Master Shigaraki. Now, let's get All Might out of the way. As All Might saw that, he went into a fit of rage and started to pummel on the Nomu like cannon. But the moment Nomu actually saw one of Izuku's parts being covered in smoke, as Izuku's upper half was actually being dragged closer and closer to it, but not close enough to be forced like the force of fucking Star Wars, my guy. As Izuku and everyone else in that area was actually trying to find Izuku's top torso, as Momo found it, as Izuku just went like, "Hey Momo, could you just throw my body over there, please? I want to regenerate and I can't while my body's over here, please," Izuku said. As Momo just started to carry Izuku's body over to the actual affected areas. As she placed him there, as Izuku just started to rapidly heal his body, all the way to its physical prowess. As the Nomu came flying over to Izuku's direction, seeing it fly over and closer to Izuku. As Izuku saw this, Izuku managed to steal as much power from the Nomu he could at that very moment. As All Might was flying by, he hit the Nomu straight back to Izuku. Without All Might realizing it, however, the Nomu was sent back to him again. But All Might threw his final smash at the Nomu, sending it flying straight out of the USJ building vicinity. As all the heroes came rushing in like cannon, trying to capture as many villains it could, them capturing most of the villains except from Shigaraki and Kurigiri, with them getting away like the original. As for everything would happen like the original, Izuku's mom would be worried. As for Elaine, she would actually come to visit Izuku's house finally after 4 years or 5 years of knowing Izuku. As she would have just stood right next to him, just comfort him on the way home. But the moment Izuku opened the door, however, Inko would have just said, "Oh, hi Izuku, you okay?" As her plate would have just smashed onto the floor. Who is this, young man? As Izuku would have just said, "Hi, oh hi mum. This is my girlfriend Elaine." And Elaine introduced herself to her as well, actually. As Inko would have just stayed shocked at that and would have just shouted at Sashi to come downstairs right the fuck now. As Sashi came rushing downstairs like a speeding bullet. "Yes, sweetie, what's up?" As Sashi would have just looked over saying, "Son, when the hell do you get a girlfriend?" Sashi said. As Sashi and Izuku would have just had a man-to-man talk, asking him if he made her pregnant yet or not. Izuku just blushed at that, saying, "No, we have not. We're only just really..." As Midoriya.exe has crashed. Thank you all for watching this video, and also one announcement: we're getting very close to 5,000 subscribers. If everyone who is watching this video at this very moment can hit the subscribe button, and it'll be very highly appreciated. And also one last thing, our server, or my server in general, almost hit 300 members. We're 2 members off at this very moment. If you guys can actually hit down in the description and hit the first link, which is the actual Discord link, you guys can be sent to the Discord and you guys can join it right there. You guys can get a selection of roles which will be on the screen at this very moment. Thank you all for watching, and peace out.